Introduction. The Elysian Fields of the Egyptian Book of the Dead by E. A. Wallis Budge. The Elysian Fields of Heaven. At a very early period in their history, the Egyptians believed in the existence of a place wherein the blessed dead led a life of happiness, the characteristics of which much resembled those of the life which he had led upon earth. These characteristics are so similar that it is hard to believe that in the early times the one life was not held to be a mere continuation of the other. At all events, the delights and pleasures of this world were believed to be forthcoming in the next, and a life there in a state of happiness, which depended absolutely upon material things, was contemplated. Such ideas date from the time when the Egyptians were in a semi-savage state, and the preservation of them is probably due to their extreme conservatism in all matters connected with religion. The remarkable point about them is their persistence, for they occur in texts which belong to periods when it was impossible for the Egyptians to have attached any serious importance to them, and some of the coarsest ideas are in places mingled with the expression of lofty spiritual conceptions. In a passage in the text of Unas, it is said of this king, Unas hath come to his pools, which are on both sides of the stream of the goddess Metert, and to the place of verdant offerings, and to the fields which are on the horizon. He hath made his fields on both sides of the horizon to be verdant. He hath brought the crystal to the great eye, which is in the field. He hath taken his seat in the horizon. He riseth like Sebek the son of Neath. He eateth with his mouth. He voideth water. He enjoyeth the pleasures of love, and he is the begetter who carrieth away women from their husbands whenever it pleaseth him so to do. And in the text of Teta we read, Hail, Osiris Teta! Horus hath granted that Thoth shall bring thine enemy unto thee. He hath placed thee behind him, that he may not harm thee, and that thou mayest make thy seat upon him, and that when coming forth thou mayest sit upon him, so that he may not be able to force intercourse upon thee. These passages give a very clear idea of the state of Egyptian morals when they were written, and they indicate the indignities to which those vanquished in war, both male and female, were exposed at the hands of the conquerors. The texts of the early period, as will be seen from the extracts given further on, give a large amount of information about the pleasures of the deceased in the world beyond the grave, but no attempt to illustrate the employments of the blessed dead is given until the 18th dynasty, when the vignette to the 110th chapter of the Book of the Dead was inserted in papyri. Here we have an idea given of the conception which the Egyptian formed of the place wherein he was to dwell after death. A homestead or farm or country intersected with canals is at once his paradise and the home of the blessed dead, and the abode of the god of his city. This place is called Sekhet Aru, or field of reeds, and this name seems to indicate that the Egyptian placed his paradise in the north of Egypt, probably in some part of the delta, or in the islands of the sea still further north. Certain it is that the deceased prays several times that the sweet breath of the north wind may be given unto him, and those who have experienced the discomfort of a south wind on a hot day in Egypt will sympathize with him. The fields of reeds, however, was but a portion of the district called Sekhet Hetep, or Sekhet Hetepet, or fields of peace, over which there presided a number of gods, and here the deceased led a life which suggests that the idea of the whole place originated with a nation of agriculturists. In the colored vignette which faces Chapter 110, the scribe Ani is seen being introduced to the gods of Sekhet Hetep by Thoth, who accompanies him to smooth his way and to do for him all that he did for Osiris. Next we see him sailing in a boat laden with offerings, which he is bearing to the hawk god. Lower down we see him reaping wheat and driving the oxen which tread out the corn, and beyond that he is kneeling before two heaps of grain, one red and one white. In the next division he is ploughing the land of Sekhet Anru or Sekhet Aru, by the side of a stream of vast length and unknown breadth, and which contains neither worm nor fish. In the fourth division is the abode of the god Osiris, and here are the places where dwell those who are nourished upon divine food, and the spiritual bodies of the dead. In one section of this division the deceased placed the god of his city, so that even in respect of his religious observances his life might be as perfect as it was upon earth. His wishes in the matter of the future life are well expressed in the following prayer: "Let me be rewarded with thy fields, O god Hetep. That which is thy wish shalt thou do, O Lord of the winds. May I become a Khu therein. May I eat therein, may I drink therein, may I plough therein, may I reap therein, may I fight therein, may I make love therein. May my words be mighty therein, may I never be in a state of servitude therein, but may I have authority therein." Elsewhere in the same chapter the deceased addresses the gods of the various lakes and sections of the Elysian fields, and he states that he has bathed in the holy lake, that all uncleanness has departed from him, and that he has arrayed himself in the apparel of Ra. In his new life even amusements are provided, but they are the amusements of earth, for he snares feathered fowl and sails about in his boat, catching worms and serpents. A remarkable passage in the text of Unas describes the deceased king as a soul in the form of a god, who devours his fathers and mothers and mankind generally, and gods. He hunts and entraps the gods in the plains of the next world, and having tied them securely, he slays and disembowels them. The choice portions of their bodies he boils and consumes at his meals at dawn, eventide, and midnight. The remainder he burns to heat the cauldrons. He eats the hearts carefully, so that he may absorb the vital powers of the gods, and by eating other portions also he acquires all the attributes of the god. Inasmuch as he has eaten the bodies of the gods, he becomes indeed a god, and since they possess the attribute of everlasting life and could not die again, the king becomes straightway possessed of their attributes. Here again we have a trace of a savage custom, namely that of cutting out a portion of some intestine of a foe and eating it in order to acquire his mental and physical powers. Such a custom must have disappeared from Egypt long before the monuments known to us were made, and it is hard to understand the retention of such a notion in a text filled with sublime thoughts and ideas. In the texts of all periods we read often that the deceased lives with Ra, that he stands among the company of the gods, and that he is one like unto the divine beings who dwell with them, but little is told us concerning his intercourse with those whom he has known upon earth, and if it were not for some 2 or 3 passages in the Theban recension of the Book of the Dead, we should be obliged to assume that the power to recognize the friends of earth in the next world was not enjoyed by the deceased. But that he really possessed this power, at least so far as his parents were concerned, we learn from the 110th chapter, where the deceased, addressing a pool or lake situated in the first section of the Elysian fields, says: "O Qenqetet, I have entered into thee, and I have seen thee, Osiris, my father, and I have identified my mother," a delight, however, which he brackets with the pleasures of making love and of catching worms and serpents. In the papyrus of the priestess Anhai we actually see the deceased lady in converse with 2 figures, one of whom is probably her father and the other certainly her mother, for above the head of the latter are written the words "her mother" Mutes, followed by the name. A supplementary proof of this is afforded by a passage in the 52nd chapter, where the deceased says, "The god shall say unto me, What manner of food wouldst thou have given unto thee? And I reply, Let me eat my food under the sycamore tree of my lady, the goddess Hathor, and let my times be among the divine beings who have alighted thereon. Let me have the power to order my own fields in Tatu, and my own growing crops in Anu. Let me live upon bread made of white barley, and let my ale be made from red grain, and may the persons of my father and my mother be given unto me as guardians of my door and for the ordering of my territory." The same idea is also expressed in the 189th chapter. Thus the deceased hoped to have in the next world an abundance of the material comforts which he enjoyed in this world, and to meet again his own God and his father and mother. As we see him frequently accompanied by his wife in several vignettes to other chapters, we may assume that he would meet her again, along with the children whom she bore him. It will be noticed that little is said throughout the Book of the Dead about the spiritual occupations of the blessed dead, and we are told nothing of the choirs of angels who hymn the deity everlastingly in the religious works of later Western nations. The dead who attained to everlasting life became in every respect like the divine inhabitants of heaven, and they ate the same meat, and drank the same drink, and wore the same apparel, and lived as they lived. No classification of angels is mentioned, and grades of them, like cherubim and seraphim, thrones, powers, dominions, etc., such as are found in the celestial hierarchy of Semitic nations, are unknown. A celestial city, constructed on the model described in the Apocalypse, is also unknown. We have seen that the Elysian fields much resemble the flat fertile lands intersected by large canals and streams of running water, such as must always have existed, and may still be seen in certain parts of the delta. Of the distance to be traversed by the dead before they were reached, nothing whatever is said. As the Egyptian made his future world a counterpart of the Egypt which he knew and loved, and gave to it heavenly counterparts of all the sacred cities thereof, he must have conceived the existence of a waterway like the Nile, with tributaries and branches, whereon he might sail and perform his journeys. According to some texts, the abode of the dead was away beyond Egypt to the north, but according to others it might be either above or below the earth. The oldest tradition of all placed it above the earth, and the sky was the large, flat, or vaulted iron surface which formed its floor. This iron surface was supported upon 4 pillars, one at each of the cardinal points, and its edges were some height above the earth. To reach this iron ceiling of the earthen floor of heaven, a ladder was thought to be necessary, as we may see from the following passage, in which Pepi the king says, "Homage to thee, O ladder of the god! Homage to thee, O ladder of Set! Set thyself up, O ladder of the god! Set thyself up, O ladder of Set! Set thyself up, O ladder of Horus, whereby Osiris appeared in heaven when he wrought protection for Ra. For it is thy son Pepi, and this Pepi is Horus, and thou hast given birth to this Pepi, even as thou hast given birth to the god who is the lord of the ladder. Thou hast given unto him the ladder of the god, and thou hast given unto him the ladder of Set, whereby this Pepi hath appeared in heaven when he wrought protection for Ra." And in another place we read, "Pepi goeth to his mother Nut there, that is, in heaven, and he entereth therein in his name of ladder." Elsewhere we are told that Pepi is holy, he hath received his staff, he is provided with his throne, and he hath taken his seat in the boat of the double company of the gods. Ra acteth as his pilot in his journey to the west, and he establisheth his throne for him at the head of the lords of Kaz, and he hath inscribed his name at the head of the living. The Pe Ka which is in the waters openeth its doors to this Pepi, and the iron which formeth the ceiling of the heavens unbolteth its gates to this Pepi. Pepi passeth through them having his panther skin upon him and his whip in his hand. A later belief placed the abode of the departed away to the west or northwest of Egypt, and the souls of the dead made their way thither through a gap in the mountains on the western bank of the Nile near Abydos. A still later belief made out that the abode of the departed was a long, mountainous, narrow valley with a river running along it. Starting from the east, it made its way to the north, and then taking a circular direction, it came back to the east. In this valley there lived all manner of fearful monsters and beasts, and here was the country through which the sun passed during the 12 hours of night. It is impossible to reconcile all the conflicting statements concerning the abode of the dead, and the Egyptians themselves held different views about it at different periods. The following extracts, however, from the pyramid texts will show the reader what views were held by them concerning the home of the blessed dead in the next world, and concerning their treatment therein by the gods. Behold, Unas cometh, behold, Unas cometh, behold, Unas cometh forth, and if Unas cometh not of his own accord, thy message having come to him shall bring him. Unas maketh his way to his abode, and the cow goddess of the great lake boweth down before him. None shall ever take away his food from the great boat, and he shall not be repulsed at the white house of the great ones by the region Miskent on the border of the sky. Behold, Unas hath arrived at the height of heaven, and he seeth his body in the Semketet boat, and Unas laboureth therein. He hath satisfied the Uraeus in the Mat boat, and hath washed it, and the Hamamet beings have testified concerning him. The winds and storms of heaven have strengthened him, and they introduce him to Ra. O make the two horizons of heaven to embrace Ra, so that he may go forth towards the horizon. O make the two horizons of heaven to embrace Heru Khuti Harmachis, so that he may go forth towards the horizon with Ra. O make the two horizons of heaven to embrace Unas, so that he may go forth towards the horizon with Ra. O make the two horizons of heaven to embrace Unas, so that he may go forth towards the horizon along with Haru Khuti and Ra. This Unas is happily united to his Ka. His panther skin and his grain bag are upon him, his whip is in his hand, his scepter is in his grasp. They bring to him the four Khus who dwell in the hair of Horus, who stand on the east side of heaven, and are glorious by reason of their scepters, and they declare the fair name of Unas to Ra, and they make him to escape from Neheb Kau. And the soul of this Unas liveth in the north of the Sekhet Aru, and he saileth about in the lake of Ka, whilst this Unas saileth towards the east side of the horizon. Whilst he saileth towards the east side of heaven, his sister the star Septet giveth him birth in the Tuat. Thou hast thy heart, Osiris. Thou hast thy legs, Osiris. Thou hast thine arms, Osiris. And Unas himself hath his heart, and Unas himself hath his legs, and Unas himself hath his arms. He hath walked with his legs towards heaven, he hath come forth with them into heaven, and his mouth declareth itself by the great dew. Unas flieth like a feathered fowl, he hovereth and alighteth like a beetle. He flieth like a feathered fowl, and alighteth like a beetle upon the empty seat which is in thy boat, O Ra. Kindle the fire in order that the flame may rise up, and throw incense upon it in order that the smell of incense may rise up. Thy scent cometh towards Unas, incense. Thy scent cometh toward Unas, incense. Your scent cometh towards this Unas, and the scent of Unas cometh towards you, O ye gods. Unas is with you, and you are with Unas. O ye gods, Unas liveth with you, and you live with Unas. O ye gods, love ye Unas. O ye gods, love him. O ye gods, come, O part of Ra, come, O matter which cometh forth from the thighs of Horus. Come, O ye who have come forth. Come, O ye who have come forth. Come, O ye who are feeble. Come, O ye who are feeble. Come, Shu, come, Shu, come, Shu. For Unas cometh forth upon the thighs of Isis. For Unas is feeble, O ye gods, upon the thighs of Nephthys, and he hath been ejected from the womb. He who setteth up the ladder for Osiris is Ra, and he who setteth up the ladder is Horus for his father Osiris when he goeth forth to his soul. Ra is on one side and Horus is on the other, and Unas is between them, being indeed the god of holy dwelling places, coming forth from the sanctuary. Unas standeth up and is Horus. Unas sitteth down and is Set. Ra receiveth him, soul in heaven and body in earth. Those who are happy and who see Unas, those who are content and who contemplate Unas, are the gods. If this god come forth towards heaven, Unas also shall come forth towards heaven, and he shall have his souls upon him, and his books shall be upon both sides of him, and his inscribed amulets shall be upon his feet, and the god Seb shall do for him what hath been done for himself. The divine souls of the city of Pe and the divine souls of the city of Nekhen shall come unto him, along with the gods of heaven and the gods of the earth, and they shall lift Unas up upon their hands. Come forth then, Unas, to heaven, and enter therein thy name of ladder. Heaven hath been given unto Unas, and earth hath been given unto him. This is the decree which Tem hath issued to Seb, and the domains of Horus, and the domains of Set, and the Sekhet Aru with their harvests adore thee in thy name of Khonsu Sept. Teta hath not hunger like Shu, Teta hath not thirst like Tefnut, for Hapi, Talmatutef, Queb Senef, and Amsep, that is, the four children of Horus, destroy the hunger which is in the belly of Teta, and this thirst which is upon the lips of Teta. The hunger of Teta is with Shu, the thirst of Teta is with Tefnut. Teta liveth upon the daily bread which cometh in its season. He liveth upon that upon which Shu liveth, and he eateth that which Shu eateth. Filth is an abomination to Teta, and he rejecteth filthy water. Ye have taken Teta to you, O ye gods, and he eateth what ye eat, he drinketh that which ye drink, he liveth upon that upon which ye live, he sitteth down as ye sit, he is mighty with the might which is yours, he saileth about even as ye sail about. The house of Teta is a net in the Sekhet Aru, he hath streams of running water in Sekhet Hetep. The offerings of Teta are with you, O ye gods. The water of Teta is as wine, even as is water to Ra. Teta revolveth in heaven like Ra, and he goeth round about the sky like Thoth. The two doors of heaven are open for thee, O Teta, for thou hast raised up thy head for thy bones, and thou hast raised up thy bones for thy head. Thou hast opened the two doors of heaven, thou hast drawn back the great bolts, thou hast removed the seal of the great door, and with a face like that of a jackal, and a body like that of a fierce lion, thou hast taken thy seat upon thy throne, and thou criest to the Khus, Come to me, come to me, come to Horus, who hath avenged his father, for it is Teta who will lead thee in. Thou puttest thy hand upon the earth, and with thine arm thou doest battle in the great domain, and thou revolvest there among the Khus, and thou standest up like Osiris. Hail, Osiris Teta! Horus hath come to embrace thee with his arms, and he hath made Thoth to drive away for thee in defeat the followers of Set, and he hath taken them captive on thy behalf, and he hath repulsed the heart of Set, for he is stronger than Set, and now thou art come forth before him, and Seb hath watched thy journey, and he hath set thee in thy place, and hath led unto thee thy two sisters, Isis and Nephthys. Horus hath united thee unto the gods, and they show themselves as brothers unto thee in thy name Sent, and they do not repulse thee in thy name Atert. He hath granted that the gods shall guard thee, and Seb hath set his sandal upon the head of thine enemy. Thou hast driven back the enemy, thy son Horus hath smitten him, and he hath torn out his own eye, and given it unto thee, in order that thou mayest be strong thereby, and that thou mayest gain the mastery thereby among the Khus. Horus hath permitted thee to hack thine enemy in pieces with this eye. He smiteth down thine enemy with it, for Horus is stronger than he is, and he passeth judgment upon his father who is in thee in thy name. He whose father is stronger than heaven, the goddess Nut, hath made thee to be a god unto Set in thy name of God, and thy mother Nut hath spread out her two arms over thee in her name of Coverer of heaven. Horus hath smitten Set, and he hath cast him down beneath thee, and Set beareth thee up, and is a mighty one beneath thee, inasmuch as he is the great one of the earth, which he ordereth in the name of Ta Sher Ta. Horus hath granted that Set shall be judged in his heart in his house with thee, and he hath granted that thou shalt smite him with thy hand whensoever he doeth battle with thee. Hail, Osiris Teta! Horus hath avenged thee, and he hath caused his Ka which is in thee to make thee to rest in thy name of Ka Hetep. Hail, Osiris Teta! Seb hath given to thee thy two eyes, that thou mayest rest in the two eyes of this great one, that is, Osiris, who is in thee. Seb hath made them to be given unto thee by Horus, that thou mayest rest upon them, that Isis and Nephthys may see thee, and that they may find thee. Horus hath made an offering unto thee. Horus hath granted that Isis and Nephthys may protect thee, and they have handed thee over to Horus, that he may rest upon thee. Horus hath glorified thee in thy name of Horizon, where Ra showeth himself in thy arms in the name of Dweller in the Palace. Thou hast made thy hand to be like a wall behind him, to give stability to his bones, and to magnify his heart. The right side of Teta belongeth to Horus, who smiteth the Tchentru in his two sceptres, and Nephthys in the two eyes. The left side of Teta belongeth to Set, who judgeth Teta. Hail, bolt which closeth the door of Nut! It is Teta, Shu, who cometh forth from Tem. Hail, Nu! Grant that the door may be opened to Teta, for he cometh as a divine soul. Nu hath adjudged Teta to Tem, and Pekah hath adjudged Teta to Shu. He granteth that the two doors of heaven shall be opened, and he hath decreed that Teta shall be among men without name. But behold, thou hast grasped Teta by the hand, and thou hast drawn him to heaven, so that he may never die upon earth among men. O father of Teta, O father of Teta in the darkness, O father of Teta, Tem in the darkness, thou hast brought Teta near thee, because he hath performed the shooting forth of flame and the making protection, even as the four goddesses Isis, Nephthys, Neith, and Serqet Hetu did for the father of Nu on the day of protecting the throne. O road of Horus, extend thy sail for Teta, give thy hand to Teta. Hail, Ra, come, for Teta passeth to the shore, even as thy followers the Unka, who love thee, have passed thee. Stretch out thy hand to the west, stretch out thy hand to Teta, stretch out thy hand to the east, stretch out thy hand to Teta, even as thou hast done to the place where is the eldest son. This Teta is Osiris, and he hath motion. This Teta hath detestation of the earth, and he will not enter into Seb. This Teta hath broken for ever his sleep in his dwelling, which is upon earth. The bones of Teta flourish, and obstacles to him are destroyed, for he is purified with the eye of Horus. The obstacles which he encountered are beaten down by the two Tchert goddesses, that is, Isis and Nephthys, and Teta hath cast to the earth his seed in Kes. The sister of this Teta, the lady of the city of Pe, bewaileth him, and the two nurses who created Osiris also create him. Teta is in heaven, this Teta is in heaven, like Shu and Ra. This Teta perisheth not, and nothing in him perisheth. Nay, this Teta is the governor of his leg of the firstborn gods. This Teta sitteth not as the guardian of God. The offerings of this Teta are for Horus and Ra, and the sepulchral offerings of this Teta are in Nu. This is Teta, and he goeth with Ra. This Teta cometh with Ra. He hath embraced his habitations, he giveth opposition and destroyeth it, he gathereth the Kas and delivereth them. This Teta watcheth and lieth down, and he hath destroyed the two Anuti in Unu. The foot of this Teta departeth not, and the heart of this Teta is not repulsed. Rise up, Teta, and lift up thy legs, O most mighty one, to go and seat thyself among the gods, and do thou that which Osiris has done in the house of the prince which is in Anu. Thou hast received thy spiritual body, Sa, and none shall set bounds to thy foot in heaven, and none shall repulse thee on earth. The Khus, who are the children of Nut, whom Nephthys hath suckled, have gathered together to thee. Thou standest up upon thy strength, and thou doest that which thou must do for thy Khu in the presence of all the Khus. Thou goest to the city of Pe, thou art glorified and returnest. Thou goest to the city of Nekhen, thou art glorified and returnest. Thou doest that which Osiris did, and behold, this most mighty Khu Teta, Teta, is upon his throne and standeth up, being provided with all things like the goddess Sam ur. None shall repulse thee in any place wherein thou wouldst enter, and none shall set bounds to thy foot concerning any place wherein it pleaseth thee to be. Hail, Osiris Teta, stand up, rise up, for thy mother Nut hath brought thee forth, and Seb hath placed thy mouth for thee. The great company of the gods have defended thee, and they have set thine enemy beneath thee. Thou hast borne that which is greater than thou art through them in thy name Atef Mahur, which is greater than thou art in thy name of Ta Abtu. Thy two sisters Isis and Nephthys come to thee, and they make thee to pass by Qemt Urt in thy name of Quem Ur, and Aneb Uchet Urt in thy name of Uachmu. Thy sister Isis came to thee with thy members, and thou wert united into her, and thou didst give her seed, and didst provide her with offspring like Septet. Hail, hail, rise up, Teta. Thou hast received thy head, thou hast embraced thy bones, thou hast gathered together thy flesh and blood, and thou goest round about the earth seeking for food. Thou hast received thy bread which decayeth never, and thy beer which goeth bad never. Thou standest at the gates which drive back the Rekhet. Kent Mentef cometh forth unto thee. He graspeth thee by the hand, and he leadeth thee to heaven, to thy father Seb, who is glad when he meeteth thee. He giveth thee his two hands, he maketh himself a brother unto thee, he feedeth thee, he setteth thee among the Khus who never perish, and the beings whose habitations are hidden make adoration unto thee. Rise up then, O thou Teta, who never diest. Of the exudations which have fallen from the eye of Horus upon the branches of the olive tree of the two Horus gods who are in the temples, O mighty Lord of divine food in Annu, thou givest bread to Teta, and thou givest beer to Teta. Thou makest Teta to flourish, thou makest his offerings to flourish, and thou makest his to flourish. If Teta suffereth hunger, the two lion gods suffer hunger. If Teta suffereth thirst, thy mother Nekhebet suffereth thirst. Teta maketh broad the throne with Seb. Teta lifteth on high the vault of heaven with Ra. Teta walketh round about in Sekhet Hetep. Teta is the eye of Ra, who lieth down and is born each day. Homage to thee, O Ra, in thy beauty, in thy splendors, in thy seats, and in thy plenitude. Thou hast brought the milk of Isis to Teta, and the water of the celestial stream of Nephthys, and power to journey over the great green sea, and life, and strength, and health, and the pleasures of love, and bread, and beer, and apparel, and everything whereon Teta liveth, and power to hearken to the gods who speak throughout the day, and to rest with them during the night, and to partake of the offerings which are made unto them. Teta looketh upon thee when thou goest forth in the form of Thoth leading the boat of Ra to the fields which are in Assu, and when thou goest in among those who bear him up. Homage to thee, O Teta, on this thy day whereon thou standest up before Ra, who cometh forth from the east, and who clotheth thee in thy spiritual body, Sa, among the souls. Anubis, governor of Amenti, giveth thee thousands of cakes, thousands of vessels of beer, thousands of vases of oil, thousands of oxen, thousands of changes of apparel, and thousands of bulls. For thee is the Smen goose slain, for thee is the Therp goose shot with an arrow. Horus hath destroyed all the evil which is in Teta by his 4 children, and Set forgetteth what he wrought against Teta by means of his 8 fiends, and those whose habitations are hidden throw open the doors to him. Rise thou, go to the earth, and seek the things which have issued from thee. Rise thou up, and pass thou on opposite to the Khus. Thy 2 wings are like those of a hawk, and thy hair is like the rays of a star. Cast ye nothing evil upon Teta, neither do ye carry off the heart of Teta, nor steal away the place wherein it abideth. Hail, thou Pepi, thou journeyest on, thou art glorious, thou hast gotten power like the god who is on his throne, that is Osiris. Thou hast thy soul within thy body, thou hast thy power behind thee, thy Ureret crown is upon thy head, thy headdress is upon thy shoulders, thy face is in front of thee. Those who acclaim thee are upon both sides of thee. The followers of the god are following after thee. The spiritual bodies, Sahu, of the god are upon both sides of thee, and they make the god to come. The god cometh, and Pepi cometh upon the throne of Osiris. The Khu which dwelleth in the city of Natat cometh, the form which dwelleth in the nome of Teni. Isis speaketh with thee, and Nephthys holdeth converse with thee. The Khus come unto thee, paying homage unto thee, and they bow down even to the ground at thy feet by reason of thy book, O Pepi, in the cities of Sa. Thou comest forth before thy mother Nut, and she strengtheneth thine arm, and she giveth unto thee a path in the horizon to the place where Ra is. The doors of heaven are opened for thee, the gates of Qebhu are unbolted for thee. Thou findest Ra, who guardeth thee, and he strengtheneth for thee thy hand, and he guideth thee into the northern and southern heavens, and he setteth thee upon the throne of Osiris. Hail, thou Pepi, the eye of Horus cometh unto thee, and holdeth converse with thee. Thy soul which dwelleth with the gods cometh unto thee, and thy form Sekhem which dwelleth among the Khus cometh unto thee. In the same way that the son avenged his father, in the same way that Horus avenged Osiris, even so shall Horus avenge Pepi upon his enemies. And thou shalt stand there, O Pepi, avenged and armed, and provided with the forms of Osiris, who is upon the throne of the governor of Amenti. And thou shalt have thy being as he hath his among the indestructible Khus, and thy soul shall stand up upon thy throne provided with thy attributes, and it shall have its being as thou hast thine in the presence of him who is the governor of the living, according to the decree of Ra, the great god, who shall plough the wheat and the barley, and give it unto thee as a gift therein. Hail, thou Pepi, it is Ra who hath given unto thee all life and strength for ever, along with thy speech and thy body. And thou hast received the attributes of the god, and thou hast become great therein before the gods who dwell on the lake. Hail, thou Pepi, thy soul standeth among the gods and among the Khus, and the fear of thee constraineth their hearts. Hail, Pepi, inasmuch as thou hast set thyself upon thy throne of the governor of the living, thy book it is which worketh upon their hearts, and thy name liveth upon earth and groweth old upon earth, and thou shalt neither perish nor decay for ever and ever. Rise thou up, O Pepi, stand thou up, O thou of great strength, and take thy seat at the head of the gods, and do thou the things which Osiris did in the house of the prince in Anu Heliopolis. Thou hast received thy spiritual body, Sa, and thy foot shall not be restrained in heaven, and thou shalt not be repulsed upon earth. And behold, the Khus, who are the children of Nut, to whom Nephthys hath given suck, have gathered themselves together unto thee, and thou standest up on thy strength, and thou doest that which it is thine to do in the presence of thy Khu for all the Khus. Thou journeyest to the city of Pe, and thou doest what must be done therein, and thou returnest. Thou goest to the city of Nekhen, and thou doest what must be done therein, and thou returnest. Thou doest that which Osiris did, and thou art upon his throne, and this Khu, the one most mighty, standeth up armed like Sma ur, and wherever thou goest, more shall repulse thee. None shall repulse thee, and none shall set a limit to thy feet wherever it pleaseth thee to go. Hail, Osiris Pepi, arise, stand up, for thy mother Nut hath given birth unto thee, and Seb hath arranged thy mouth for thee. The great company of the gods have avenged thee, and they have put thine enemies beneath thee. Thou hast carried that which is greater than thyself through them in thy name of Atef Me Ur, and thou hast netted that which is greater than thyself through them in thy name of Ta Tani. Thy two sisters, Isis and Nephthys, come unto thee, and they make thee to traverse Kemtert, and thy name of Kem Ur, and Aneb Uchit Urt, in thy name of Uach Ur, and verily thou art Urt Shent in Shenur, and Teben Shent in Teben Peshur, Heb Nebu Shent At in Shen A Sekmu. And Isis and Nephthys have protected thee in the city of Sot. from their master who is in thee in thy name of master of Salt, and from their God who is in thee in thy name of God. They adore thee so that thou mayest not depart from them in thy name of Morning Star, and they bring offerings before thee so that thou mayest not suffer pain in thy name of Tchen Tru. Thy sister Isis hath come unto thee rejoicing in thy love, and thou hast had intercourse with her, and hast made her to conceive, and she is heavy with Septet. And Heru Sept cometh forth from thee as Heru the dweller in Septet, and thou doest what must be done in him in thy name of Khu, dweller in Tchentru, and he avengeth thee in his name of Horus, the son who avengeth his father. Hail, Osiris Pepi, thou hast offered thy libation, and thou hast made thy libation before Horus in the name of Comer forth from Keb. Thou hast offered thine incense, which maketh thee divine, and thy mother Nut hath made thee to be as a god to thine enemy in thy name of God. Thou hast offered the emanations which come forth from thee, and Horus hath granted that the gods, which whithersoever thou goest, thou hast offered the emanations which come forth from thee, and Horus hath granted that thou shalt judge his children wheresoever thou takest them, and he decreeth for thee the renewals of youth in thy name of Water of Youth. Horus hath strength then, and he judgeth his father in thee in his name of Heru Bat. Hail Pepi, thy journeying and the journeying of thy mothers along with thee are the journeying of Horus when he journeyeth forth, and the journeying of his mothers who journey with him. Those who are with him urge him on, and they lead him to the east. Hail thou Pepi, thine arms are Uapau, and thy face is Ab-uat. Hail thou Pepi, a royal oblation, thou seatest thyself in the regions of Horus, and thou goest about through the regions of Set. Thou seatest thyself upon the iron throne, and thou art judge at the head of the great company of the gods who dwell in Anu. Hail thou Pepi, Kent an Marti or Mati guardeth thee whilst thou guardest thy calves. Hail Pepi, Ar guardeth thee against the Khus. Hail Pepi, know that thou shalt receive for thine holy oblation which thou offerest each day thousands of cakes, thousands of vessels of ale, thousands of oxen, thousands of feathered fowl, thousands of sweet things, and thousands of linen garments. Hail Pepi, thou hast thy water, thou hast thine abundance, thou hast thy purifying gums, which are brought to thee before thy brother Nekek. O Osiris Pepi, thou risest as king of the south and of the north by reason of thy power over the gods and their cause, that is doubles. And behold, do thou, O Nut, spread thyself over thy son Osiris Pepi, and protect him, and deliver him from Set. Come, O Nut, and protect thy son, for thou must protect this mighty one. O Nut, cast thyself over thy son Osiris Pepi, and protect him, O great wife of this mighty one who is among thy children. The god Seb hath come unto thee, O Nut, and thou didst possess strength, and thou didst gain power in the womb of thy mother Tefnut, when as yet thou wert not born. O do thou unite life and strength unto Pepi, so that he may not die. Thou didst make strong thy heart, and didst spring forth from the womb of thy mother in thy name of Nut. O thou daughter who didst gain the mastery over thy mother, and didst make herself to rise as queen of the north, protect thou this Pepi who is within thy womb, that he may not die. For me, O Nut, to whom thou hast given birth, proclaim the name of Osiris Pepi through Horus, beloved of the two lands, Pepi the king of the north and of the south, Pepi the lord of the diadems of the vulture and of the uraeus, beloved from the womb, Pepi the triple hawk of gold, Pepi the flesh and bone of Seb, by whom he is beloved, Pepi the friend of all the gods, Pepi the giver of all life and stability and power and health and joy of heart, like the sun, living for ever. Thy water is thine, thy flood is thine, that is to say, the emanations which come forth from the god, the excretions which come forth from Osiris. Thy hands are washed, thine ears are opened, and this form Sekhem doeth what hath to be done for his son. Thou art washed, and thy ka double is washed, and thy ka has sat down, and he eateth bread with thee for ever and ever. Inasmuch as thou hast gone and hast taken thy seat, O Osiris, thy mouth is open before thee, acclamations are upon thy hand, thy nostrils are gratified with the odor of the uraeus, thy legs walk to keep the feast, thy teeth are, and thy fingers reckon up the lakes over which thou passest, like the great bull of Anu and of the nome of Uatchit, to go to the fields of Ra, which he loveth. Rise up then, O Pepi, and die not. Hail, Pepi, arise, stand up, thou art pure, thy ka is pure, thy soul is pure, thy Sekhem is pure, thy mother cometh to thee, thy mother Nut, the mighty creatress, cometh to thee, and she maketh thee pure, O Pepi. She fashioneth thee, O Pepi, and thou hast motion, O Pepi, and thou art pure, thy ka is pure, thy Sekhem is pure among the Khus, and thy soul is pure among the gods. O Pepi, hail, Pepi, thy bones have been presented unto thee, thou hast received thy head before Seb, and he hath destroyed the evil which belongeth to thee, O Pepi, before Tem. Thou hast opened the gates of heaven, thou hast unbolted the doors of Kabu, which repulse the beings of understanding. Rekhet and Ment acclaimeth thee, mankind and Memet greeteth thee, and the stars which never fail stand up before thee. Thy winds are incense, and thy north wind is a flame, for thou art he who hath become mighty in the nome Teni, and thou art the star that existeth by thyself, and which appeareth in the cast eastern half of heaven, which never groweth old, into which Horus of the city of Tat hath given his body. Hail, thou stablished one, thou most exalted one among the stars, which never fail, thou shalt never perish. The heavens speak, and the earth quaketh by reason of thy book, O Osiris, when thou makest thine appearance. Hail, ye cows of Amu Tenen, who have suckled Amet Tenen. Go ye round about behind him, and weep before him, and acclaim him by word and deed, for Pepi, who goeth forth, goeth into heaven among his brethren the gods. Pepi is pure, Pepi hath taken his staff, he hath provided himself with his throne, and he hath taken his seat in the boat of the great and little companies of the gods. Ra transporteth Pepi to the west, and he establisheth the throne of Pepi above the lords of Kas, and he writeth down Pepi at the head of the living. The Ka which dwelleth in Keb is opened unto this Pepi, and the iron which formeth the ceiling of the sky is opened unto this Pepi, and he passeth through onwards. His panther skin is upon him, and his scepter and flail are in his hand, and Pepi is sound with his flesh, he is happy with his name, he liveth with his Ka, and he Ra destroyeth the evil which is upon both sides of Pepi, he driveth away the evil which followeth him, even as Ma'utu, who dwelleth in Sekhem, driveth away the evil which is upon both sides of him, and doeth away with the evil which followeth him. Let Ra be embraced in the two horizons of heaven, so that he may go forth therein before Herukuti Harmakas. Let Herukuti be embraced in the two horizons of heaven, so that he may go forth before Ra. Let Pepi be embraced in the two horizons of heaven, so that he himself may go forth before Ra and before Herukuti. O enter into the verdant stream of the lake of Ka. O fill with water the fields of Aru, and let Pepi set sail for the eastern half of heaven, towards that place where the gods are brought forth, wherein Pepi himself may be born along with them as Herukuti, for Pepi is triumphant, and Pepi acclaimeth, and the Ka of Pepi acclaimeth the gods, and they invoke Pepi, and they bring to him these four gods, who make their ways over the tresses of Horus, and who stand with their sceptres in the eastern half of heaven, and they declare to Ra the excellent name of Pepi, and they exalt the excellent name of Pepi before Neheb Kau, for Pepi is triumphant, and Pepi acclaimeth, and his Ka acclaimeth the gods. The sister of Pepi is Septet Sothis, and the birth of Pepi is the morning star, and it is he who is under the body of heaven before Ra. Pepi is triumphant, and he acclaimeth, and his Ka acclaimeth the gods. Pepi knoweth his mother, and he is not unmindful of her, the white crown, who begetteth, and who dwelleth in the city of Nekeb. She is the lady of the great house, the lady of the land of union, the lady of the hidden land, the lady of the field of the boat, the lady of the lake, which bringeth offerings. She decreeth the red crown. She is the lady of the domains of the city of Tep. O mother of this Pepi, cry out, and present the breast to him, and suckle him. O thou her son Pepi, O father, the breast hath been presented unto thee, and it hath suckled thee. O father, thou livest, O father. Thou art little, O father, thou comest forth into heaven like the hawks, having feathers like unto those of geese. O father, it is the god Hetch Hetch who bringeth these things to Pepi. O Sema Ur, thou bull of offerings, remove thy horn, and let this Pepi pass by. Inasmuch as Pepi passeth through thee, and inasmuch as he goeth to heaven in full life and power, this Pepi seeth his father, this Pepi seeth Ra. This Pepi is indeed God, and the envoy or angel of God. Pepi cometh, and he is pure in Sekhet Aru. This Pepi goeth down to the field of Kenset, and the followers of Horus purify him. They guard carefully this Pepi, and they recite for him the chapter of Mao, and they also recite for him the chapter of coming forth in life and in power. This Pepi cometh forth to heaven in life and in power in the boat, and in the boat of Ra. He piloteth for Ra the gods thereof, and they rejoice in this Pepi as they rejoice when Ra goeth forth from the eastern part of the sky in peace, in peace. This Pepi cometh forth to the eastern part of heaven, where the gods are born, and where he himself is born, as Heru Khuti. Pepi is triumphant. Ma'aziru and the Ka of Pepi is triumphant. Pepi maketh adoration, and the Ka of Pepi maketh adoration. The sister of this Pepi is Septet. He is born as the morning star. He goeth with you, and he journeyeth with you in Sekhet Aru, and he draweth nigh as do you unto the field of turquoise. He eateth of that of which ye eat. He liveth upon that upon which ye live. He putteth on apparel like unto the apparel which ye put on. He anointeth himself with the sweet smelling substances with which ye anoint yourselves. He receiveth his water with you at the lake of Mena of this Pepi, and he drinketh it out of the vessels of the Khus. Ra hath purified heaven, and Horus hath purified the earth, and every god who is with them purifieth this Pepi, for Pepi adoreth the god. O thou path of Pepi, which leadeth to the great halls, testify ye concerning Pepi before these two great gods, for Pepi is Unka, the son of Ra, who beareth the heavens upon his shoulders, and who guideth the earth. Hail, ye gods, let Pepi take his seat among you. Hail, ye stars, bear ye Pepi upon your shoulders, as ye bear Ra. Follow ye this Pepi, as ye follow Apuat, and love ye him as ye love. This Pepi hath come to thee, O Lord of heaven. This Pepi hath come to thee, Osiris. He strengtheneth thy face, and he arrayeth thee in the garment of a god. He hath purified thee in Ayata. He hath destroyed the members of thine enemies. He hath hacked them in pieces, and he hath changed himself into the being who is among those who have been hacked in pieces. For Horus, the son of whom thou hast given birth, hath not placed this Pepi among the dead, but among the divine gods. Their water is the water of this Pepi, their bread is the bread of this Pepi, their purifications are the purifications of this Pepi, and that which Horus hath done for Osiris he hath also done for this Pepi. Heaven uttereth words, the earth quaketh, Seb advanceth, the two divine gnomes part asunder, the ceremony of ploughing the earth is ended, and the offering is set before Pepi, the living one, the established one. He goeth forth from heaven, and goeth about over the iron sky in life and stability. He saileth over it, and overthroweth in his course the fortifications of Shu. He goeth forth to heaven upon his wings, like a mighty duck which hath broken its bonds, and Anubis leadeth the procession which Horus made in Abydos when Osiris was interred. He goeth forth into heaven among the stars, which never perish or diminish. His sister is Septet, and his guide, the morning star, leadeth him to Sekhet Hetep, and he seateth himself there upon his iron throne, which hath lions' heads and feet in the form of the hoofs of the bull Sema-ur. He standeth up there in his vacant place between the two great gods, and his scepter, which is in the form of a papyrus, he hath with him. He stretcheth out his hand over the Hemet beings, and the gods come to him, bending their backs in homage. The two great gods watch, one on each side of him, and they find Pepi, like the great and little companies of the gods, acting as the judge of words, being the prince over every prince. They bow down before Pepi, and they make offerings unto him as unto the great and little companies of the gods. Hail, Osiris! It is not Pepi who entreateth to see thee in the form in which thou art. Pepi hath gone down into the great green sea, and thou, O great green sea, hast dropped thy head and bent thy back, and the children of Nut who come down upon thee, putting their garlands upon their heads and round their necks, offer the flowers, which are the crowns of the pools of Sekhet Hetep, to Isis, the great lady, and the goddess who beareth the pike in Akhet bringeth them and spreadeth them out as a gift before her son Horus, whom she suckleth at the breast, so that he may traverse the earth in his two white sandals, and may go to his father Osiris. Pepi hath opened out his way among the birds. He hath travelled with the lords of food. He hath gone to the great lake which is in Sekhet Hetep, on which the great gods alight, and these great and imperishable beings give to him the tree of life, whereon they themselves do live, that he also may eat and live thereon. Take then this Pepi with thee to this great country which hath become subject unto thee by the will of the gods, wherein thou eatest during the night even until dawn, and where thou becomest master of divine food, in such wise that Pepi may eat of that of which thou eatest, that he may drink of that of which thou drinkest. The following prayer, which is found in shortened forms in Graeco-Roman and Roman periods, occurs in the text of Pepi II. Hail, great company of the gods who are in Annu, grant that Pepi Nefer Ka Ra may flourish, and grant that his pyramid, his everlasting building, may flourish, even as the name of Temu, the governor of the great company of the gods, flourisheth. If the name of Shu, the lord of the upper shrine in Annu, flourisheth, Pepi Nefer Ka Ra shall flourish, and this his pyramid, his everlasting building, shall flourish. If the name of Tefnut, the lady of the lower shrine in Annu, is stablished, the name of this Pepi Nefer Ka Ra shall be stablished, and his pyramid shall be stablished for ever. If the name of Seb, the soul of the earth, flourisheth, the name of Pepi Nefer Ka Ra shall flourish, and this his pyramid shall flourish, and his everlasting building shall flourish. If the name of Nut flourisheth in Het Shenth in Annu, the name of this Pepi Nefer Ka Ra shall flourish, and this his pyramid shall flourish, and this his building shall flourish for ever. If the name of Osiris flourisheth the Nome Teni, the name of this Pepi Nefer Ka Ra shall flourish, and this his pyramid shall flourish, and this his building shall flourish for ever. If the name of Osiris, governor of Amenti, flourisheth, the name of this Pepi Nefer Ka Ra shall flourish, and this his pyramid shall flourish, and this his building shall flourish for ever. If the name of Set in Nupt Ombus flourisheth, the name of Pepi Nefer Ka Ra shall flourish, and this his pyramid shall flourish, and this his building shall flourish for ever. If the name of Horus of Bahutet flourisheth, the name of Pepi Nefer Ka Ra shall flourish, and this his pyramid shall flourish, and this his building shall flourish for ever. If the name of Ra flourisheth in the horizon, the name of this Pepi Nefer Ka Ra shall flourish, and this his building shall flourish for ever. If the name of Kent Merti in Sekhem is established, the name of this Pepi Nefer Ka Ra shall flourish, and this his pyramid shall flourish, and this his building shall flourish for ever. If the name of Uat Shit, who dwelleth in Tep, flourisheth, the name of this Pepi Nefer Ka Ra shall flourish, and this his pyramid shall flourish, and this his building shall flourish for ever. End of introduction. The Elysian Fields. Introduction. The Magic of the Book of the Dead, of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, by E. A. Wallis Budge. Introduction. The Magic of the Book of the Dead. The Egyptians, from the earliest to the latest period of their history, were addicted to the use of formulae which were thought to be able to effect results usually beyond the power of man, and they accompanied such formulae with the performance of certain ceremonies. The formulae consisted of the repetition of the names of gods and supernatural beings, benevolent or hostile to man as the case might be, and of entreaties or curses. The ceremonies were of various kinds, and the object of the present chapter is to describe briefly those which relate to the various sections of the Book of the Dead. The Egyptian believed that every word spoken under certain circumstances must be followed by some effect, good or bad. A prayer uttered by a properly qualified person, or by a man ceremonially pure, in the proper place and in the proper manner, must necessarily be answered favourably. And similarly, the curses which were pronounced upon a man, or beast, or thing, in the name of a hostile supernatural being, were bound to result in harm to the object cursed. It seems that this idea had its origin in the belief that the world, and all that therein is, came into being immediately after Thoth had interpreted in words the will of the deity in respect of the creation of the world, and that creation was the result of the god's command. In very early times the Egyptian called in the professional religious man to utter words of good omen over the dead body of his relative or friend, and later the same words, written upon some substance and buried with him, were believed to be effectual in procuring for him the good things of the life beyond the grave. In the text on the pyramid of Unas is a reference to something written which the deceased was supposed to possess in the following words: "The bone and flesh which have no writing are wretched, but behold, the writing of Unas is under the great seal, and behold, it is not under the little seal." And in the text on the pyramid of Pepi I we find the words: "The uraeus of this Pepi is upon his head, there is a writing on each side of him, and he hath words of magical power at his 2 feet." Thus equipped, the king enters heaven. In the reign of Cheops, however, we are told that his second son Herutataf brought to the court a man who possessed magical powers, and who was able to join the head to a decapitated body, and to make the complete body live again as before. When Cheops ordered the head to be struck off from a prisoner, that the sage might fasten it on again, the sage excused himself from performing this difficult task. But when a goose was brought, and its head was cut off, and laid on one side of the room, and the body on the other, he spake certain magical words, whereupon the goose stood up and began to waddle, and the head began to move towards it. When the head had joined itself again to the body, the bird stood up and cackled. Thus, in that remote period, a man claimed to be able to restore life to decapitated creatures by means of words of magical power, and it seems that the belief in the efficacy of the words of Thoth was already well established. In the late period, the mourner consoled himself by asserting that the Book of the Dead, prepared for his dead relative or friend, had been written by the fingers of the god Thoth himself. A common way to effect certain results, good or evil, was to employ figures made of various substances, chiefly wax, or amulets made of precious stones and metals in various forms. Both figures and amulets were inscribed with words which gave them the power to carry out the work assigned to them by those who caused them to be made. It is well known that the Egyptians believed that the qualities and much else, including the ka of a living original, could be transferred to an image thereof by means of the repetition over it of certain formulae, and a good or evil act done to a statue or figure resulted in good or evil to the person whom it represented. In the West Kar Papyrus we are also told that the wife of a high Egyptian official called Aba Aner fell in love with one of the king's followers, and that she sent to him and told him of her desire. Subsequently the pair met in the woman's garden, and they passed the day in drinking and in pleasure. On the morrow the husband was told of his wife's conduct, and he determined to punish both with death. Having sent for his ebony box bound with fine metal, he made a waxen crocodile a few inches long, and having recited magical formulae over it, he gave it to his chief servant, and told him to throw it into the water when he saw his wife's paramour going to bathe in the evening. When the guilty pair had passed another day together, and the young man went down to the river in the evening, the chief servant cast the waxen crocodile into the water, and as it was falling, it turned into a huge living crocodile about 12 feet long, which swallowed the young man. 7 days later, Aba Anir and the king Neb ka went to the water where the crocodile was, and Aba Aner ordered it to give up the young man, and it came out of the water and straightway brought up the young man. When the king had made some remark, Aba Aner picked up the crocodile, which at once turned into the small waxen crocodile that it was originally, and when he again ordered it to devour the young man, it once more became a living reptile, and seizing the young man, made its way to the water and disappeared with him. The faithless wife was burnt. The principal actors in this story are said to have flourished during the rule of the third dynasty of Egypt, nearly 4,000 years before Christ, and it is a noteworthy fact that the narrative mentions the ebony and metal box and the making of a waxen crocodile in a way which seems to show that their owner was in the habit of using the box and the wax frequently. About the time of the 18th dynasty we learn from a papyrus that a man was prosecuted in Egypt for having made figures of men and women in wax, by which he caused sundry and divers pains and sicknesses to the living beings whom they represented. And according to Pseudo Callisthenes, Nectanebus wrought magic by means of a bowl of water, some waxen figures, and an ebony rod. The waxen figures were made in the forms of the soldiers of the enemy who were coming against him by sea or by land, and were placed upon the water in the basin by him. Nectanebus then arrayed himself in suitable apparel, and having taken the rod in his hand, began to recite certain formulae and the names of divine powers known unto him, whereupon the waxen figures became animated, and straightway sank to the bottom of the bowl. At the same moment the hosts of the enemy were destroyed. If the foe was coming by sea, he placed the waxen soldiers in waxen ships, and at the sound of the words of power both ships and men sank into the waves as the waxen models sank to the bottom of the sea. The same informant tells us that when Nectanebus wished Olympias, the mother of Alexander the Great, to believe that the god Ammon had visited her during the night, he went forth from her presence into the plain and gathered a number of herbs which had the power of causing dreams, and pressed out the juice from them. He then fashioned a female figure in the form of Olympias, and inscribed the queen's name upon it, and having made the model of a bed, he laid the figure thereon. Nectanebus next lit a lamp, and reciting the words of power which would compel the demons to send Olympias a dream, he poured out the juice of the herbs over the waxen figure. And at the moment of the performance of these acts, Olympias dreamed that she was in the arms of the god Ammon. A tradition also exists to the effect that Aristotle gave to Alexander the Great a number of waxen figures nailed down in a box which was fastened by a chain, and which he ordered him never to let go out of his hand, or at least out of that of one of his confidential servants. The box was to go wherever Alexander went, and Aristotle taught him to recite certain formulae over it whenever he took it up or put it down. The figures in the box were intended to represent the various kinds of armed forces that Alexander was likely to find opposed to him. Some of the models held in their hands leaden swords which were curved backwards, and some had spears in their hands pointed head downwards, and some had bows with cut strings. All these were laid face downwards in the box. When Alexander was engaged in war with any nation armed with swords or spears or bows, if he recited the formulae which Aristotle had taught him, the swords of the foe would become as lead and bend backwards, the spears would become impotent in the hands of those who held them, and their heads would turn to the ground, and the strings of the bows would snap. Returning to purely Egyptian sources for information concerning the use of wax figures, we come to an important work consisting of several chapters which were to be recited to keep away storm clouds and thunder from the sky. One chapter reads: "Fire upon thee, O Apep, thou enemy of Ra! The eye of Horus prevaileth over the accursed soul and shade of Apep. The flame of the eye of Horus gnaweth into that enemy of Ra. The flame of the eye of Horus eateth into all the enemies of Pa'ah in death and in life." The rubric belonging to the chapters orders that it shall be recited over Apep, written in green ink upon a piece of new papyrus, and over a wax figure of Apep, on which his name is inscribed in green ink. This figure shall then be put in the fire, that the enemy of Ra may be devoured. When Apep is put in the fire, speak ye words of power, and say: "Taste thou, death to thee, Apep! Get thee back, retreat, thou enemy of Ra! Fall down, wriggle away, depart, retreat! I have driven thee back, I have hacked thee in pieces. Back, thou fiend, an end to thee. Therefore have I cast fire at thee, therefore have I caused thee to be destroyed, therefore have I judged and condemned thee to an evil doom. An end to thee, an end to thee. Taste thou an end to thee, mayest thou never rise up again. An end to thee, an end to thee. Taste thou and come to an end. I have destroyed the enemy of Ra. This figure of Apep shall be burnt in a grass fire, and when burnt, its ashes are to be mixed with excrement and thrown into a fire. Afterwards, when thou hast thrown Apep into the fire at daybreak of the festival of the Six, spit upon him and defile him with thy left foot. Thus shall be repulsed the roarings of the backward of face. Thou shalt do the like of this at daybreak on the festival of the 15th day, for by means of it Apep shall be repulsed and slain before the Sektet boat. Thou shalt do the like of this when tempests rage in the eastern parts of the sky, when Ra sets in the land of life, to prevent the arrival of red, threatening clouds in the eastern quarter of the sky. Thou shalt do the like of this many times as a preventive against the shower. The sun's disk shall shine, and Apep shall be overthrown in very truth. Elsewhere we are told that if it be wished to destroy the fiends which accompany Apep, we must write the names of their fathers and mothers and offspring with green paint upon new papyrus, and also inscribe their names upon wax figures of them which shall be tied round with dark hair. These figures shall be spit upon, and shall be spurned with the left foot and stabbed with a stone knife. The most important mention of figures in the Book of the Dead occurs in the 6th chapter, which, properly speaking, forms one of the texts that accompany the scenes of the funeral chamber as exhibited in chapter 151. When the Egyptian in very early days conceived the existence of the Elysian Fields, it occurred to him that the agricultural labours which would have to be carried out there might entail upon himself toil and fatigue. To avoid this, a short chapter 5 was drawn up, the recital of which was believed to free the deceased from doing any work in the underworld, but it was felt that the work must be done by some person or thing, and eventually it became the custom to bury a figure or figures of the deceased with him in his tomb, so that it or they might perform whatever work fell to his share. It is probable that in semi-savage times the wealthy Egyptian's burial was accompanied by the slaughter of several slaves, who were supposed to follow him to the next world and to minister to his wants there. The figures which were buried with the dead in the later times seem to have taken the place of the slaughtered slaves. To these figures the Egyptian gave the name Ush-Abtiu, a word which is commonly rendered by respondents or answerers, and they are often described in modern times as the working figures of Hades. They are made of stone of various kinds, wood, faience, etc. I know of none earlier than the 11th dynasty. They are inscribed with a text in which the deceased says, "If I be called, or if I be adjudged to do any work whatsoever of the labours which are to be done in the underworld by a man in his turn, let the judgment fall upon thee instead of upon me always, in the matter of sowing the fields, of filling the water courses with water, and of bringing the sands of the east to the west." To this the Shabti figure makes reply, "Verily I am here, and will come whithersoever thou biddest me." Several of the chapters of the Book of the Dead are followed by rubrics which give directions for the performance of certain magical ceremonies, and among them may be specially mentioned the following. Chapter 13. This chapter was to be recited over 2 rings made of Ankh Ham flowers. One was to be laid on the right ear of the deceased, and the other was to be wrapped up in a piece of byssus whereon the name of the deceased was inscribed. Chapter 19. This chapter was to be recited over the divine chaplet which was laid upon the face of the deceased while incense was burnt on his behalf. Chapter 100. This chapter was to be recited over a picture of the boat of the sun, painted with a special ink upon a piece of new papyrus, which was to be laid on the breast of the deceased, who would then have power to embark in the boat of Ra and to journey with the god. Chapter 125. The judgment scene was to be painted upon a tile made of earth, upon which neither the pig nor any other animal had trodden, and if the text of the chapter was also written upon it, the deceased and his children will flourish for ever, his name would never be forgotten, and his place would henceforth be with the followers of Osiris. Chapter 130. This chapter was to be recited over a picture of the god Ra, wherein a figure of the deceased sitting in the bows was drawn. This done, the soul of the deceased would live for ever. Chapter 133. This chapter was to be recited over a faience model of the boat of Ra, 4 cubits in length, whereon the figures of the divine chiefs were painted. Painted figures of Ra and of the khu of the deceased were to be placed in the boat. A model of the starry heavens was also to be made, and upon it the model of the boat of Ra was to be moved about in imitation of the motion of the boat of the god in heaven. This ceremony would cause the deceased to be received by the gods in heaven as one of themselves. Chapter 134. This chapter was to be recited over figures of a hawk, Ra, Tem, Shu, Tif, Nut, Seb, Nut, Osiris, Isis, Suti, and Nephthys, painted on a plaque, which was to be placed in a model of the boat of Ra, wherein the deceased was seated. This ceremony would cause the deceased to travel with Ra in the sky. Chapter 136a. This chapter was to be recited over a figure of the deceased seated in the boat of Ra. Chapter 137a. This chapter was to be recited over 4 fires, fed by a special kind of cloth anointed with unguent, which were to be placed in the hands of 4 men who had the names of the pillars of Horus written upon their shoulders. 4 clay troughs, whereon incense had been sprinkled, were to be filled with the milk of a white cow, and the milk was to be employed in extinguishing the 4 fires. If this chapter were recited daily for the deceased, he would become like unto Osiris in every respect. The rubric supplies a series of texts which were to be recited: 1. Over a tet of crystal set in a plinth, which was to be placed in the west wall of the tomb. 2. Over a figure of Anubis set in a plinth, which was to be placed in the east wall. 3. Over a brick smeared with pitch, which was set on fire and then placed in the south wall. And 4. Over a brick inscribed with the figure of a palm tree, which was set in the north wall. Chapter 140. This chapter was to be recited over an utchat, or figure of the Eye of Horus, made either of lapis lazuli or mock stone, and over another made of jasper. During the recital of the chapter 4 altars were to be lighted for Ra Tem, and 4 for the Utchat, and 4 for the gods who were mentioned therein. Chapter 144. The 7 sections of this chapter were to be recited over a drawing of the 7 Arits, at each of which 3 gods were seated. By these means the deceased was prevented from being turned back at the door of any one of the 7 mansions of Osiris. Chapter 162. This chapter was to be recited over the figure of a cow made of fine gold, which was to be placed at the neck of the deceased. During the performance of this ceremony, the priest is ordered to say, "O Amen, O Amen, who art in heaven, turn thy face upon the dead body of thy son, and make him sound and strong in the underworld." Chapter 163. This chapter was to be recited over a serpent having legs and wearing a disk and two horns, and over two utchats having both eyes and wings. Chapter 164. This chapter was to be recited over a three-headed ithyphallic figure of Mut painted upon a piece of linen, and over the figures of two dwarfs painted, one on each side of the goddess. Chapter 165. This chapter was to be recited over the figure of the god of the lifted hand, who had a body in the form of that of a beetle. Besides these, a number of chapters have rubrics varying in length from 2 to 20 lines, which declare that if the deceased be acquainted with their contents, or if they be inscribed upon his coffin, they will enable him to attain great happiness and freedom in the world beyond the grave. 7 other chapters consist of texts which were written upon the amulets that were usually laid upon the mummy, namely Numbers 30b, 89, 155, 156, 157, 158, and 159. Chapter 30b is found inscribed upon thousands of large green basalt scarabs, which were usually set in a banded frame of gold and laid inside or upon the breast, just over the heart. It is also found inscribed upon green basalt amulets made in the form of the heart. The object of this amulet was to preserve the heart of the deceased and to protect it from the attacks of those who were thought to steal away the hearts of the dead. Its use is as old as the fourth dynasty, in which period the text was not cut but painted upon it. Chapter 89, which was written to ensure the union of the soul with the body in the underworld, was recited over the human-headed hawk, made of gold and inlaid with precious stones, which was laid upon the neck of the mummy. Examples of this amulet have been found with a few words of the chapter inscribed upon them. Chapter 155 is found inscribed upon tets made of gold and precious stones, which have been found attached to the neck of the mummy. This amulet represents the tree trunk with 4 branches pointing to the 4 cardinal points which contained the dead body of Osiris, and it bestowed upon its possessor stability and lasting preservation. Chapter 156 is found inscribed upon several carnelian buckles which have been found attached to the neck of the mummy. This amulet gave to the deceased the powers which were enshrined in the blood and power and enchantments of the goddess Isis. Chapter 157 is found inscribed upon gold vultures, which have been found attached to the neck of the mummy. This amulet gave the deceased the protection of the goddess Isis, such as she exercised on behalf of her own son Horus. Chapter 158 was inscribed upon the collar of gold which was placed on the neck of the mummy. This amulet gave the deceased freedom from the bandages with which he was swathed. Chapter 159 is found inscribed upon several mother of emerald scepters which were attached to the neck of the mummy. This amulet gave protection or strength to the deceased. Chapter 162 is found inscribed upon circular pieces of papyri laid down upon cartonnage backs, commonly known as hypocephali. They were placed under the back of the head of the mummy, and by this warmth, similar to that which he possessed upon earth, was imparted. Chapter 166 is found inscribed upon small pillows made of hematite and other substances. As the ordinary pillow raised the head of the mummy from the bed of the coffin, so this amulet raised the head of the deceased in the horizon and prevented it from being laid low. Finally, figures of the gods in metal, stone, faience, wood, wax, etc., were attached to the mummy in order to place it under the special protection of the deities whom they represented. The following are the amulets which are commonly found in Egyptian tombs, and their significations. 1. Thet, buckle, the protection of the blood, power, and incantation of Isis. 2. Tet, tree trunk. Stability, firmness, lastingness. 3. Mut, mother, the protection of the goddess Isis, who in the form of a vulture protected her son Horus and bewailed her husband Osiris. 4. Asek, collar, freedom from the fetters of the bandages. 5. Uach, scepter, green youth, vigor, to flourish and to renew youth. 6. Urs, pillow, the lifting up of the head and body. 7. Ab, heart, the seat of life and source of good and evil thoughts. The heart of green basalt was connected with Chapter 30b, the heart of lapis lazuli with Chapter 26, the heart of mother of emerald with Chapter 27, and the heart of carnelian with Chapter 29b. 8. Ankh, the object which this hieroglyphic represents is not known, but it means life, and symbolizes the life which the gods live. 9. Utchat, eye of Ra, or Horus, good health, safe, sound, protection. 2 Utchats typify the two eyes of Ra and the sun and moon. 10. Nefer, a musical instrument, good luck, happiness, joy. 11. Sam, a tool, union, unity. 12. Kut, the sun on the horizon, the coming forth with the rising sun, and the abode of the blessed dead with Ra in the west. 13. Hetch, white crown, southern or upper Egypt. 14. Tesher, red crown, northern or lower Egypt. 15. Shen, the sun's orbit, eternity. 16. User, scepter, power. 17. Ren, a rope which enclosed the name of kings and royal persons. This sign is commonly known as Cartouche. Name, the preservation of the name was considered to be of the highest importance, for the blotting out of a man's name brought with it eternal death. 18. Menat, an instrument, joy, pleasure, sexual pleasure, happiness. 19. Naha, an angle, protection. 20. Hefnu, frog, a new life, resurrection. 21. Sekhek, level, equilibrium, straightness. 22. Ket, staircase, steps, the steps whereon Ra rested in Khemennu, and whereon Osiris stands in the underworld. 23. Maket, ladder, the ladder by which the deceased ascended into heaven. 24. Tchebowi, two fingers, the fingers which the god extended to the deceased to enable him to enter heaven. 25. Ma'at, feather, what is straight, right, truth, law. 26. Khepur, beetle, the type of the self-begotten God, the creator of the gods and of heaven and earth and all that therein is, and the symbol of the resurrection. Finally, mention must be made here of the great importance attached by the Egyptians to the knowledge of the names of gods, supernatural beings, etc., and it seems that the deceased who was ignorant of them must have fared badly in the underworld. Thus in Chapter 1b it is said that the deceased knoweth Osiris and his names. In Chapter 99 the deceased is obliged to tell the names of every portion of the boat wherein he wishes to cross the great river in the underworld. In Chapter 125 Anubis makes him declare the names of the two leaves of the door of the hall of Osiris before he will let him in, and even the bolts and bolt sockets and lintels and planks will not allow him to enter until the deceased has satisfied them that he knows their names. Entrance into the seven Arits or mansions could not be obtained without a knowledge of the names of the doorkeeper, watcher, and herald who belonged to each, and similarly the pylons of the domains of Osiris could not be passed through by the deceased without a declaration by him of the name of each. The idea underlying all such statements is that the man who knows the name of a god could invoke and obtain help from him by calling upon him, and that the hostility of a fiend could be successfully opposed by the repetition of his name. The knowledge of the names of fiends and demons constituted the chief power of the magicians of olden times, and the amulets of the Gnostics, which were inscribed with numbers of names of supernatural powers, are the practical expression of the belief in the efficacy of the knowledge of names which existed in Egypt from time immemorial. End of Introduction. The magic of the Book of the Dead. Introduction. The object and contents of the Book of the Dead by E.A. Wallis Budge. Introduction. The object and contents of the Book of the Dead. Though the chapters of the Book of the Dead represent beliefs belonging to various periods of the long life of the Egyptian nation, and opinions held by several schools of thought in Egypt, the object of them all was to benefit the deceased. They were intended to give him the power to have and to enjoy life everlasting, to give him everything which he required in the life beyond the grave, to ensure his victory over his foes, to procure for him the power of going whithersoever he pleased, and when and how he pleased, to preserve the mummy intact, and finally to enable his soul to enter into the bark of Ra, or into whatever abode of the blessed had been conceived of by him. A perusal of the translations of the chapters will show the reader what their contents are, but it will not be out of place here to group certain chapters which have a common object, for the various beliefs which they represent then become more clear. A certain number of the chapters of the Book of the Dead are hymns, which are addressed either to Ra or to Osiris. In the present work these are represented by the hymns from the Papyri of Ani, Qenna, Hu Nefer, and Necht, which I have called hymns introductory, and to these we should add chapters 182 and 183, which are really hymns to Osiris by Thoth. Another collection of fine hymns is found in chapter 15, where we have hymns to Ra and Osiris and a litany to Osiris. The Papyrus of Ani, from which these are translated, gives the oldest and most complete form of the chapter. They are most important, for they enable us to understand what attributes were ascribed to Ra, and it seems as if many of them were in later times transferred to Osiris, who was originally nothing but a god of the dead. With these hymns should be mentioned the texts which accompany the judgment scene, but these have already been described in the chapter on that subject given above, and they are fully translated. The judgment scene also leads us to the consideration of the 125th chapter, which is certainly one of the most important and interesting in the whole book. It consists of 3 parts: introduction, negative confession, and concluding text. Introduction was said by the deceased at the entrance to the hall of Double Maati. The negative confession was recited by him before the 42 gods who sat in judgment upon him in this hall, and the concluding text was uttered by him when he had passed the ordeal of judgment and was beginning his new life. It is probable that these 3 texts were originally merely versions each of the other, but in the 18th dynasty they are all copied together into papyri. The deceased first asserted that he had not committed certain sins. He next addressed 42 gods by their names, and declared before each that he had not committed the special sin which it was the duty of the god to punish. And lastly he makes a 3rd confession, the first part of which is practically in the same words as a portion of the introduction. The introduction provided the passwords which enabled him to enter the hall, and the concluding text provided those which enabled him to go forth from it. It is impossible to say when or how this beautiful chapter with its lofty conceptions of morality grew, but although the form in which these are set forth is not older than the 18th dynasty, the ideas themselves belong to a period which is as old as the rule of the kings of the 3rd dynasty. From the negative confession we see that the pious Egyptian abhorred fraud, theft, deceit, robbery with violence, iniquity of every kind, adultery, unchastity, and sins of wantonness, manslaughter, murder, incitement to murder, and that he delighted in showing he had wronged none in any way. He neither purloined the things which belonged to his God, nor did he slay the sacred animals. He thought not lightly of the God of his city, and he never cursed him. He honored his king, and he neither wasted his neighbor's plowed lands, nor defiled his running stream. He spake not haughtily, he behaved not insolently, he multiplied not his speech overmuch. He abused no man, he attacked no man, he swore not at all, he stirred not up strife, he terrified no man, he was not a man of wrath, he spake evil of none, and he never pried into matters to make mischief. He judged not hastily, he defrauded not his neighbor in the market, he shut not his ears to the words of right and truth, he sought not honors, he never gave way to anger except for a proper cause, and he sought not to enrich himself at the expense of his neighbors. It is difficult to give the exact shades of meaning of many of the words in this confession, but the general sense is thoroughly well made out. The Egyptian code of morals, as may be seen from the 125th chapter, was the grandest and most comprehensive of those now known to have existed among the nations of antiquity. The 110th chapter, which describes the employments and enjoyments of the deceased in the Sekhet Hetep and Sekhet Aru, or Elysian fields, contains ideas of the greatest antiquity, which date probably from the time when the system of village communities was in vogue in Egypt. The deceased ploughs, sows, and reaps, and lives exactly the same kind of life as a farmer would live in the fertile lands of the Delta, and it would seem that he enjoys all the pleasures which a human being enjoys upon earth. In the 5th chapter of the Book of the Dead, the deceased found a text which would free him from certain agricultural labors which had to be done in the Elysian fields, but inasmuch as the work of watering and top dressing the fields and sowing the crops had to be done by some one, figures made in the form of the deceased and inscribed with his name were buried with the dead to toil for him. Such figures have often in their hands models of the basket in which the field laborer carried earth and the hoe with which he filled it. And the text of the 6th chapter, which was also inscribed upon them, provided the deceased with substitutes to toil for him in the farms of the gods. The reader will seek, and seek in vain, for many of the attributes of the prayers of Christian nations, and it is a noticeable fact that the Egyptian had no conception of repentance. At the judgment which took place in the hall of Osiris, he based his claim for admission into the kingdom of that god upon the fact that he had not committed certain sins, and that he had feared God and honored the king, and had given bread to the hungry, drink to the thirsty, clothes to the naked, and a boat to him that had suffered shipwreck on the Nile. His belief in the efficacy of works was great, and when he had any doubt about their power to deliver him finally from the hosts of darkness, he protected himself by means of amulets, inscribed or plain, and figures of gods painted upon his coffin and papyrus, or cut in wood or on stones which possessed magical powers. The chapters which refer to such amulets are Numbers 13, 19, 30b, 89, 100, 125, 130, 133, 134, 136a, 137a, 140, 144, 156, 157, 158, 159, 162, 163, 164, 165, and 166. One of the most interesting chapters in the whole book is the 17th, which contains a series of statements concerning the origin of the gods and the things of the next world. To many of these statements more than one explanation of their meaning is appended, and as these occur in copies of the Chapter which are found inscribed upon coffins of the XIth dynasty, it is clear that already at that early date several opinions on these matters existed. The views expressed in the Chapter appear to be those of an ancient college of priests at Heliopolis, which became gradually adopted throughout Egypt. The vignettes which accompany the Chapter in the best illuminated papyri are most elaborate, and they show by their attention to detail that it formed one of the most important of the texts of this class which were copied for general use. The 64th Chapter was very highly esteemed, and it was believed to be one of the oldest parts of the Book of the Dead. Already in the XIth dynasty it existed in two versions, one of which was thought to have been composed or edited in the First Dynasty, and the other in the Fourth Dynasty. The longer version is entitled simply "The Chapter of Coming Forth by Day in the Underworld", but the shorter is described as "The Chapter of Knowing the Chapters of Coming Forth by Day" in a single chapter. Whether we are to understand by the latter title that the Chapter contained the essence of all the Chapters of the Book of the Dead, and that the deceased who was provided with it was as well protected as if he had copies of them all, is not quite clear, but it seems probable. It will be noticed that several Chapters are called Chapters of Coming Forth by Day, and among them may be specially noticed Chapters 2 and 3, which provide that the deceased may come forth in the underworld and live after he hath died, even as doth Ra day by day. Chapter 65, which provides that the khu of the deceased shall live and shall inflict blows upon his enemy. Chapter 66, which gives the deceased power to alight upon the forehead of Ra. Chapter 68, which gives him mastery over everything which is in the underworld and enables him to journey about among the living. Chapters 69, 70, and 71, wherein he identifies himself with Osiris, Sa, Orion, Anubis, Horus, and Tem, and declares his power over the winds of heaven. Chapter 72, which enables him to come forth by day in all the forms which he pleaseth to take, and to enter into an abode in the Elysian fields, where he shall be amply provided with wheat and barley. And Chapter 180, which enables him to go about in the underworld with freedom of movement, and to perform all the transformations of a living soul. An important group of Chapters referring to the transformations which a man may undergo if he pleases in the underworld is introduced by Chapter 76, wherein the deceased declares that he has been led unto the house of the king by the mantis, or so-called praying insect. These Chapters enable him to transform himself into a hawk of gold, Chapter 77, into a divine hawk, Chapter 78, into the governor of the divine sovereign princes, Chapter 79, into the god who giveth light in the darkness, Chapter 80, into a lotus, Chapter 81a and Chapter 81b, into the god Ptah, and into a living being in Anu, Chapter 82, into a Bennu, Phoenix, Chapter 83, into a heron, Chapter 84, into a living soul, Chapter 85, into a swallow, Chapter 86, into the serpent Sata, Chapter 87, and into a crocodile, Chapter 88. A considerable number of Chapters refer, as we should naturally expect, to the preservation of the body of the deceased in the tomb, and several were expressly written to give him power to resist the attacks of enemies, and to obtain meat and drink and the power of motion in the underworld. Thus Chapter 1, which is proved by its title and vignette to refer to the ceremonies which took place on the day of the funeral, provides for the burial of the body in the proper way, so that the deceased may go in after coming forth. And Chapters 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 48, 67, 107, 118, 119, 122, 161, and 180 enable him to make his way in the underworld without let or hindrance, and to overcome his enemies. The deceased wished to protect himself by means of magical formulae. Chapter 24 provides these formulae for him, and Chapter 32 gives him the power to keep hold of them. Chapters 21 and 22 give the deceased a mouth, and Chapter 23 provides him with the power of opening it. Chapter 25 gave him the faculty of remembering his name. 7 chapters 26 through 30b gave him a heart, and provided him with prayers and formulae which prevented those who stole hearts from snatching it away from him, and from driving it away from him when it was weighed in the judgment hall of Osiris. The crocodile which came to steal away the words of power and protection which the deceased had with him was repulsed by the words of Chapter 31. Chapters 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, and 39 prevented him from being stung or bitten by snakes and serpents, and did away with the power of the beetle Apes Shate to gnaw his body to pieces. Chapters 38a and 38b enabled him to escape from the deadly cobra, and Chapter 40 delivered him from the power of the serpent, who, though he is here acting as the friend of Horus by devouring the ass which typifies the fiend Set, is nevertheless to be feared. In the underworld and the cities thereof punishment was inflicted on the dead, and to provide the favoured of Osiris with power to escape from stripes and wounds and decapitation at the deadly block, Chapters 41, 42, 43, and 50 were composed. The deceased wished for a seat in the celestial Annu, Heliopolis, and this was given him by Chapter 75, and Chapter 47 prevented his throne and his habitation from being removed by any hostile being. He sighed to have power over running water and to snuff the sweet breath of the north wind, and these comforts were secured for him by Chapters 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, and 62. The large number of chapters written for this purpose will show how great was the anxiety of the Egyptian in this matter. As fire and boiling water existed in the underworld, he hastened to protect himself from burns or scalds by the use of Chapters 63a and 63b. Proper food was as necessary to the ka, or double of the deceased, as fresh air and water, and to ensure it against the need to eat filth and to drink dirty water, Chapters 52, 53, 105, 110, 148, and 189 were composed. The idea of the ka being obliged to wander about starving and in search of food was so abhorrent to the pious Egyptian that every text which could in any wise help to secure sufficient meat and drink for it was gladly copied over and over again. The object of Chapters 4, 74, 117, 119 was to enable the deceased to walk about at will and to roam through Re Stau, or the passages of the tomb and underworld, and when his way was stopped by Apep, Chapter 7 enabled him to pass over the back of the fiend. The union of the soul with the body was provided for by Chapter 89, as was the escape of the soul and the shade from the bonds of the tomb by Chapters 91 and 92. Though the deceased had no wish to go to the east in the underworld, see Chapter 93, he nevertheless wished to visit the celestial Abydos. A successful journey to this city was secured by the use of Chapter 138. In spite of the best efforts of the embalmers, bodies sometimes rotted and perished in their tombs. Such calamities were averted by Chapters 45 and 46, especially by Chapter 154, which is one of the most interesting in the whole book. Overthrow in the underworld was averted by the use of Chapter 51, the wrath of the god was appeased by Chapter 14, and the danger of dying a second time was done away with by Chapters 44, 175 and 176. The love of ritual and ceremony induced the Egyptians to take special care about the arrangement of the mummy and coffin and funeral furniture in the mummy chamber, and to make certain that all was properly done in this matter. Chapter 151, which consists of a view of the chamber and a group of short but important texts, was composed. The type of this chamber was, of course, the tomb of Osiris. The hall of Osiris, wherein the god dwelt with his princes, could only be reached after certain doors and mansions and domains, which were guarded by porters in the form of monsters, had been successfully passed through by the deceased, to enable the deceased to go through the 7 mansions and the 21 pylons and the 15 domains. Chapters 144, 147, 149, and 150 were written. These provided the deceased with the names of the beings who were in charge of the doors, and supplied him with the speeches which it was necessary that he should make. During his journey in the underworld the deceased came to a huge river which he was obliged to cross. To enable him to embark in the mystical boat, every portion of which possessed a name which he was bound to know and be able to repeat, he provided himself with chapters 98 and 99. But this boat only served to take him across the river, and he longed to be able to embark in the boat of Ra, and to sit in its bows, and to sail about with the god for ever. This delight, however, could only be secured for him by means of chapters 100, 101, 102, 134, 136a, and 136b, and as a result copies of most of these chapters exist in nearly all large papyri. The Egyptian believed that he would encounter the foes who attacked Osiris in the underworld, and that the calamities which befell the god would come upon him also. He who delivered Osiris out of all his troubles was Thoth, the scribe of the gods, and to him were addressed chapters 18 and 20, which secured for the deceased the protection and triumph which this god had secured for his brother Osiris. The favor of Thoth was so necessary that 4 chapters, 94, 95, 96, 97, were written to instruct the deceased to make an offering of a pallet and an ink jar to the god, and how to become nigh unto him. Before the deceased could roam at will in the underworld, it was necessary that he should know the deities of the chief cities of the 4 quarters of the land wherein he was. Chapters 107 and 108 enabled him to know the souls of Amentet, that is, of the west. Chapter 109 enabled him to know the souls of the east. Chapter 112 enabled him to know the souls of the city of Pe in the north. Chapter 113 enabled him to know the souls of the city of Nekhen in the south. Chapter 115 enabled him to know the souls of Anu, and chapters 114 and 116 enabled him to know the souls of the city of Kemenu, Hermopolis. In the underworld the deceased was threatened by the danger of the snarer or fowler and his net, and chapters 153a and 153b were written to enable him to escape from them. 2 chapters 169 and 170 provided for the establishing of the funeral bed of the deceased. 2 chapters 168a and 168b set out at length the libations which it was necessary for him to pour out. Chapter 123 gave him power to enter the great house. Chapters 126, 127, 128, 185, and 186 supplied him with the prayers which had to be said to the holy apes, and to the gods who were the leaders and guides in the underworld, and to Osiris and Hathor. Chapter 132 enabled him to go back to see his house. Chapter 152 gave him power to build a house upon earth. Chapter 171 provided him with the girdle of purity. Chapters 103, 124, 131 and 181 gave him power to go in before the divine sovereign chiefs of Osiris and to be nigh unto Ra. Chapter 104 gave him a seat among the great gods, and Chapter 184 brought him nigh unto Osiris. Chapter 130, which made perfect the Khu, was ordered to be recited on the birthday of Osiris. Chapter 133 made the Khu perfect before the great company of the gods. Chapter 135, which was to be recited on the day of the new moon, gave the deceased power to become like unto Thoth. Chapter 140, which was to be recited on the last day of the 6th month of the Egyptian year, enabled him to appear in glory before all the gods when the Utchat or Eye of Ra was full, and Chapter 147 conferred upon him the power which the Utchat possessed and enabled him to identify himself with it. Chapters 141 and 142 provided the text which a man was directed to recite for his father or for his son during the festival of Amentet. They made the deceased to be perfect with Ra and with the gods, and Chapter 173 contained the addresses which Horus made to his father Osiris, and which were also assumed to be made to the deceased by Horus. Chapter 172 is a remarkable and beautiful composition in 9 sections, the contents of which were first made known in detail by M. Naville. In it the limbs of the deceased are described in highly poetical language, and the comparisons at times resemble the descriptions of the limbs of the beloved one in the Song of Solomon. 4 chapters 142, 163, 164, and 165 have no equivalents in the Recensions of the Book of the Dead older than the 26th dynasty, and as they contain foreign words and foreign ideas, they are probably the work of non-Egyptian authors. Each of them is followed by a long rubric which orders certain curious amulets to be made and the performance of ceremonies. In chapters 174 and 177 and 178 we have extracts from the old Heliopolitan Recension of the Book of the Dead, which was in use in the 5th and 6th dynasties, and the comparison of the texts, which, thanks to M. Maspero, we are now able to make, is very instructive. We can see how misunderstandings of the meaning of certain passages arose through the want of adequate determinatives, and we can note how later copyists modified and adapted old texts to suit modern views. Thus, in the passage from the text of Unas, we have a reference to the love-making of the deceased, which is entirely omitted from the later copy of it given in the Papyrus of Nebseni, and it seems as if the ideas expressed in it found no favour with the cultured mind of Nebseni, the great designer, draftsman, and artist, who was attached to the temple of Ptah at Memphis. In a similar manner it will be noticed that most of the coarse expressions and ideas which are found in the religious books of the old period have no counterparts in the Theban recension of the Book of the Dead. It will be seen from the above brief summary that although the contents of the papyri containing the Theban recension are miscellaneous, there are references to other works connected with the burial of the dead from which no extracts are given. Among such may be specially mentioned the texts which are connected with the performance of the ceremony of opening the mouth. But as it is impossible to give any adequate description of them in the space now left to me, I refer the reader to my Papyrus of Ani. Introduction. The object and contents of the Book of the Dead. Introduction. A Book of the Dead of Nessi Khonsu, of the Egyptian Book of the Dead by E.A. Wallis Budge. Introduction. A Book of the Dead of Nessi Khonsu, a priestess of Amen, about BC 1000. This holy god, the lord of all the gods, Amen Ra, the lord of the throne of the two lands, the governor of Apt, the holy soul who came into being in the beginning, the great god who liveth by or upon Ma'at, the first divine matter which gave birth unto subsequent divine matter, the being through whom every other god hath existence, the one who hath made everything which hath come into existence since primeval times, when the world was created, the being whose births are hidden, whose evolutions are manifold, and whose growths are unknown, the holy form, beloved, terrible and mighty in his risings, the Lord of wealth, the power, Khepera, who createth every evolution of his existence, except whom at the beginning none other existed, who at the dawn in the primeval time was Etenu, the prince of rays and beams of light, who having made himself to be seen caused all men to live, who saileth over the celestial regions and faileth not, for at dawn on the morrow his ordinances are made permanent, who though an old man shineth in the form of one that is young, and having brought or led the uttermost parts of eternity, goeth round about the celestial regions, and journeyeth through the Tuat to illumine the two lands which he hath created, the God who acteth as God, who moulded himself, who made the heavens and the earth by his will or heart, the greatest of the great, the mightiest of the mighty, the prince who is mightier than the gods, the young bull with sharp horns, the protector of the two lands, in his mighty name of the everlasting one, who cometh and hath his might, who bringeth the remotest limit of eternity, the God Prince, who hath been Prince from the time that he came into being, the conqueror of the two lands by reason of his might, the terrible one of the double divine face, the divine aged one, the divine form who dwelleth in the forms of all the gods, the lion god with awesome eye, the sovereign who casteth forth the two eyes, the Lord of flame, which goeth against his enemies, the God Nu, the prince who advanceth at his hour to vivify that which cometh forth upon his potter's wheel, the disk of the moon god, who openeth a way both in heaven and upon earth for thy beautiful form, the beneficent or operative God, who is untiring, and who is vigorous of heart both in rising and in setting, from whose divine eyes come forth men and women, at whose utterance the gods come into being, and food is created, and Tchefau food is made, and all things which are come into being, the traverser of eternity, the old man who maketh himself young again, with myriads of pairs of eyes and numberless pairs of ears, whose light is the guide of the God of millions of years, the Lord of life, who giveth unto whom he pleaseth the circuit of the earth along with the seat of his divine face, who setteth out upon his journey and suffereth no mishap by the way, whose work none can destroy, the Lord of delight, whose name is sweet and beloved, and dawn mankind make supplication unto him, the mighty one of victory, the mighty one of twofold strength, the possessor of fear, the young bull, who maketh an end of the hostile ones, the mighty one who doeth battle with his foes, through whose divine plans the earth came into being, the soul who giveth light from his two Utchats eyes, the God by Iti, who created the divine transformations, the Holy One who is unknown, the King who maketh kings to rule, and who girdeth up the earth in its courses, and to whose souls the gods and the goddesses pay homage by reason of the might of his terror, since he hath gone before that which followeth endureth, the creator of the world, by his secret counsels, the God Khepera, who is unknown, and who is more hidden than the other gods, whose substitute is the divine disk, the unknown one who hideth himself from that which cometh forth from him. He is the flame which sendeth forth rays of light with mighty splendor, but though he can be seen in form, and observation can be made of him at his appearance, yet he cannot be understood, and at dawn mankind make supplication unto him. His risings are of crystal among the company of the gods, and he is the beloved object of every god. The God Nu cometh forward with the north wind in this God who is hidden, who maketh decrees for millions of double millions of years, whose ordinances are fixed and are not destroyed, whose utterances are gracious, and whose statutes fail not in his appointed time, who giveth duration of life, and doubleth the years of those unto whom he hath a favour, who graciously protecteth him whom he hath set in his heart, who hath formed eternity and everlastingness, the King of the south and of the north, Amen Ra, the King of the gods, the Lord of heaven and of earth, and of the deep, and of the two mountains, in whose form the earth began to exist, he, the mighty one, who is more distinguished than all the gods of the first and foremost company. Amen Ra, the King of the gods, the great God, the beginning of what hath come into being, hath sent forth his great and holy edict for the deification of Nesi Khonsu, the daughter of Ta Hennu Tehuti, both in Amentet and in Neter Khert. And he saith, I deify Nesi Khonsu, the daughter of Ta Hennu Tehuti, in Amentet, and I deify her in Neter Khert. I have granted that she shall receive water in Amentet, and funeral offerings in Neter Khert. I deify her soul and her body in Neter Khert, and I will not let her soul be destroyed therein. Nay, I deify her soul in Neter Khert, and I make it like unto that of every god and of every goddess who have been deified therein, and like unto that of everything whatsoever which hath been deified in Neter Khert. I have granted that every god and every goddess and every divine being and everything which hath been deified shall receive her in Neter Khert, and I have granted that all her kinsfolk shall receive her therein with a gracious reception. And I have granted that every good thing which cometh into being with a man when he assumeth this form, whether he be carried off into the underworld, or whether he become deified, or whether every good thing be wrought for him where he is, or whether he made to receive water and offerings, or whether he be made to receive his cakes from those which those who have been deified receive, or whether he be made to receive his divine offerings from those which those who have been deified receive, shall be done for her, so that it shall be with her. Amen Ra, the King of the gods, the great God, the prince of that which hath come into being from the beginning, saith, I cause Nesi Khonsu, the daughter of Ta Hen Tehuti A, to make every kind of food and every kind of drink, which every god and every goddess who have been deified in the underworld make. And I cause her to make every good thing, which is with every god and every goddess who have been deified in the underworld, and by means thereof I have delivered my servant Pa Nechem from every evil thing. And I will not let any of the calamities which occur in the underworld fall upon Nesi Khonsu to do her harm. And I grant that her soul may come forth, and that it may enter in according to its desire, and never be repulsed. Amen Ra, the King of the gods, the great God, the prince of that which hath come into being from the beginning, saith, I have gone round, I have examined the heart of Nesi Khonsu, the daughter of Ta Hen Tehuti A, and she hath done no evil thing against Pa Nechem, the son of Auset M. Kebet. I have carefully examined her heart, and I have not let her attack his life, and I have not allowed her to attack his life through other folk. I have carefully examined her heart, and I have not let her do any evil thing unto him, such as is done against a living man. I have carefully examined her heart, and I have not allowed her to do by means of other folk any of the evil things which are done against a living man. Amen Ra, the King of the gods, the great God, the prince of that which hath come into being from the beginning, saith, I have caused her not to seek to do any evil thing which would cause death unto Pa Nechem, the son of Auset M. Kebet. I have carefully examined her heart, and she hath done no evil thing unto him in particular, nor any evil thing which could harm him in general. She hath not worked against him by means of any god or any goddess who has been deified, nor by means of any male Khu, or of any female Khu, who has been deified, and she hath not worked against him by means of any kind of beings whatsoever, who work schemes and plans so that beings of every kind may be obedient unto their words. I have carefully examined her heart, and see that she hath sought that which was good for him whilst he was upon earth, and I have caused her to seek in every way to give him a long life upon earth, and a life of health and soundness and power and strength and might, and I have caused her in every way to procure for him happiness wherever the sound of his words was heard. I have caused her to seek neither harm for him, nor anything which could inflict an injury upon man, nor anything which could cause evil to Pa Netchem, the son of Auset em Kebit. I have caused her not to seek any evil thing, or any noxious thing which would induce death, or any harmful thing like unto those things which make the heart of man to tremble, or those which do harm unto the men and women who were beloved by Pa Netchem, nor unto him by making his heart terrified at them by means of the evil words which have been directed against them, the men and women. I have caused all that concerneth the heart and soul of Nesi Khonsu to be in good case, that is to say, her heart hath not been driven away from her soul hath not been driven away from her heart hath not been driven away from herself, Nesi Khonsu herself hath not been in any way driven back with the repulse with which a being in her form, that is to say, a being who hath been deified in the underworld, whatever its nature may be, is sometimes repulsed. And no evil thing whatsoever, such as may be done unto the human being who is in a state like unto hers, hath been done unto her. Nay, but I have given all that could delight Nesi Khonsu, namely, that Pa Netchem might enjoy a very long life, along with might and strength and power, that his life might not be cut short, that no evil thing of any kind whatsoever, and none of the things which do harm unto a man and strike terror into his heart, might come nigh him, or his wives, or his children, or his brethren, or Atawi, or Nesta Neb Asher, or Masa Haratha, or Tchui Nefer, the children of Nesi Khonsu, or the brethren of Nesi Khonsu. And I have caused that everything which would be of advantage to Pa Netchem, and all that would be of benefit to him in any way whatsoever, and which could happen to a man in his condition, and an exceedingly long life for himself, and his wives, and his children, and his brethren, may also come to Nesi Khonsu, and to her children, and to her sisters. Amen Ra, the king of the gods, the great god, the prince of that which hath come into being from the beginning, saith, I grant that all things, of whatever kinds they may be, which a man hath when he is in the state in which Nesi Khonsu is, and by which he is deified, shall be possessed by her. And I grant that the 70 addresses to Ra may be recited in my name, so that her soul may not be destroyed in the underworld. Amen Ra, the king of the gods, the great god, the prince of that which hath come into being from the beginning, saith, every good word which can deify Nesi Khonsu, which will give her power to receive water and offerings, and which shall be uttered or said before me by any person whatsoever, I will fulfill to the uttermost, omitting nothing. Every good word which shall be uttered before me on behalf of Nesi Khonsu, I will fulfill at every season of the heavens, when Shu cometh forth, in such wise that none of the evil things which can reach a person who is in the condition in which she is shall touch her at any season of the heavens, when Shu cometh forth from the waters with his weapons, and when day beginneth in the sky. And I will utterly do away with the evil effect of every word which may be spoken by any person whatsoever of a being who is in the state in which is Nesi Khonsu, omitting nothing, at every season of the heavens, when Shu cometh forth from the waters with his weapons, and when day beginneth in the sky. Amen Ra, the king of the gods, the great god, the prince of that which hath come into being from the beginning, saith, I have caused the 70 addresses to Ra to be recited in my name, and I have not allowed any single benefit which belongeth to a man who is in the condition in which is Nesi Khonsu to escape her. And I have caused her to receive offerings, bread, and ale, and unguents, and wine, and pomade, and milk, and raisins, and I have caused her to receive all the benefits and all the good things which a being who is in her condition, and who is favored by me, and who hath been deified, can receive. And I have caused her to share equally with every god and every goddess every good thing whatsoever which those who have been deified in the underworld receive. And I have caused her to receive her divine offerings along with the gods. Amen Ra, the king of the gods, the great god, the prince of that which hath come into being from the beginning, saith, if the word by which the offering of Sekhet Aru and of a field in Sekhet Aru is made is not one which is good for the person who is in the condition in which is Nesi Khonsu, and it hath no effect, I myself will make unto her the offering of Sekhet Aru and of a field in Sekhet Aru, when that which is beneficial for her in this kind of offering shall come into being, and it shall suffer no diminution thereof whatsoever. Amen Ra, the king of the gods, the great God, the prince of that which hath come into being from the beginning, saith: All good things which shall be spoken in my presence, saying, let such and such things be done for Nesi Khonsu, the daughter of Ta Hennu Tehutia, I will perform for her, and they shall not be lessened, and they shall not be abrogated, and nothing therefrom shall be cut off at every season of the heavens when Shu cometh forth. And moreover, she shall receive in abundance the choicest things of all that is good for her, even as do every man and every god who have been deified, and who go forth, and who come in, and who journey unto every place as they please. Amen Ra, the king of the gods, the great God, the prince of that which hath come into being from the beginning, saith: As concerning all good things which have been spoken in my presence, that is to say, perform them for Pa Nechem, the son of Auset em Kebet, my servant, and for his wives, and his children, and his brethren, and his friends, and for those for whom his heart is afraid lest evil come upon them. Behold, I will send forth my great and mighty and holy word into every place, that it may cause every good thing to be with Pa Nechem and his wives, and his children, and his brethren, and all his friends, in such wise that if any man shall omit to say, let the decree of Amen Ra, the king of the gods, the great God, the prince of that which hath come into being from the beginning, be performed, I myself will make that which the great God hath spoken to come to pass. End of Introduction, the Book of the Dead of Nesi Khonsu.